I found this really nice lettering and I created my own lettering inspired by it. It's not copied because I changed the color. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Nick. From the title of this video, I'm sure you know what this video is going to be about. So last week, I created a poll on my Instagram stories asking you which topic you want me to do a video on for my next YouTube video. And this topic got most votes, so that is why I'm doing this video. But don't worry if you voted for a different video idea. I'll still do a video on those topics, probably after this one. Because I kind of want to do this is a font, how to turn your lettering into a font video. So subscribe so that you won't miss out on those videos. So today's video is going to be about copied or inspired, how to create a lettering from an inspiration. As I was writing the content for this video, I realized that it's going to be a very long video. First part will be inspired or copied, wherein I'm going to talk about my opinions on what's the difference between a copied work and an inspired work, and I'll also be giving some tips on how to avoid copying someone's work. Then part 2 of this topic is going to be about sharing with you my step-by-step process on how to create a lettering from an inspiration. I had to cut it because I don't want this video to be a very long one. But before we get into it, I would just like to give a disclaimer. Each designer, each artist, each creator has his or her own opinions and perspective about this topic. So what I'm going to share with you is just my opinion. It's not going to be the standard of what is a copied work and what is an inspired work. I'm just going to share with you my opinions on this topic. By all means, I would like to hear from you in the comment section, whether you agree or disagree on what I'm going to share with you. If you have any comments or if you have any reactions or violent reactions, I would like to know about them in the comments below. But when it comes to this topic of copied or inspired, I think I could sum up everything I'm going to share with you in one word, and that word is respect. We always go back to respect when we are talking about this topic. Respect goes both ways. First is you want to respect the artist or the creator of your inspiration, and you also want the community or your audience to respect you and respect your work. Artists or creators have put in so much time, so much effort into creating what they share to the rest of the world, and you want to respect that by not copying their work. We all want our work to be respected by our audience or the community. That is why it's very important for us to avoid copying someone else's work, especially when it's a community that really speaks out about these copying incidents. It's usually a creator's audience that first calls out someone who's been copying a work from an artist they know. I've experienced that a few times, wherein I received messages from a few of my followers sending me screenshots of someone else's work that are copied from my work. That is why if you want the community or the audience to really respect you, you really have to avoid copying, because once you copy someone else's work, especially when you've been called out for it, there's a huge chance that you are going to lose the respect of your followers. And when someone copies someone else's work, it does not only harm one person, it harms both parties. Both you and the artist are harmed in that situation. That's why it's really important for you to avoid copying, especially when you're trying to get inspiration from someone else's work. Before we move on, I would like to share a quote that I've read a few years back from Austin Kleon's Steal Like an Artist. He wrote, "Nothing is original." I strongly believe in that statement. And he also wrote, "Nothing can come from nowhere." He even quoted Ecclesiastes 1:9, "There is nothing new under the sun." So for me, I believe that everything we create is not 100% us. It is a combination of our influences from other people and our own interpretation of it. For example, as a lettering artist, when I create a work, I can't say that it is 100% mine because I'm not the one who invented the alphabet. I'm not the one who invented the letter forms for each letter. So there's no way for me to say that this is 100% me. And everything we do is a conscious or subconscious union of our different influences, our different experiences, our different ideas. That is why I feel like I could explain what an inspired work through this illustration. This is just how I define an inspired work from a copied work or any work in general. So everything as a whole represents our work, and our work is comprised of different circles. These circles represent the different inputs that builds our work. So if you can see, we have different influences. Some are small and some are big. They all work together to form one work. And for me, this is what differentiates an inspired work from a copied work. For an inspired work, even if you have a lot of different smaller circles or smaller inspirations, the biggest inspiration or the biggest input of your work is from yourself. That is why the biggest circle should be from yourself, which are your ideas, your experiences, your style, your personality. What you put in should comprise most of the work. For me, that's how I define an inspired work. Because if you only have smaller circles from different influences all together, what you're doing is simply picking or getting elements from different artists and putting them all together without adding yourself to it, which for me I think is simply copying different artists, not just one. That is just my view on what an inspired work is. I'm sure all of us have been inspired by someone and someone else's work. When we say inspired by someone else's work, it could mean two different things. It could mean you yourself are inspired or your work is inspired. The difference is for the first one, when you yourself are inspired, for example, you saw someone's work, its beauty inspired you to create something. That means you are motivated to create something because of someone else's work. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to create something similar. It could mean that you're going to create something different. For example, you've been following someone who you know is like a mother of 6, and when you see her work, you saw that despite everything she had on her plate, she was able to create something really, really beautiful. And then that inspired you and that motivated you to create something. That is one meaning to being inspired, but is not the focus of our video. What we're more concerned is another meaning to being inspired, which is your work is inspired by someone else's work. For example, you saw that person's beautiful work and you feel inspired to create something that is based on your source of inspiration. It could be the quote that was written, if it's a lettering or calligraphy work, or the style or the decorations or the layout. That is the side of being inspired that I am talking about. But first, we have to understand why this is a sensitive topic, because for designers, creators, artists, calligraphers, most of us have been doing this for quite some time, wherein we've spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of resources in building our craft or our skill. That is why sometimes it hurts other artists more when they see people copy their work. Just imagine the years you poured in to developing your own style and then just see someone copy it. I wouldn't be surprised if the original artist will be bothered by that, because for most things, everything don't just happen overnight. That is why I want to go back to the most important thing that I shared earlier, which is respect. Respect for the original artist and respect for yourself. I didn't expect this video to go this serious, this deep, but I hope you're still with me. Now, about copied and inspired work, let's talk about the obvious, because I still see it a lot, especially in social media, wherein I still see people copy someone else's work. I'm not sure if it's intentional or unintentional, but it's something I still see. That's why I want to talk about the obvious. For the sake of this discussion, let's talk about lettering specifically. If you simply recreated it on a different medium like a t-shirt, I wish I don't have to tell you this, but that is obviously copying. Even if you're the one who recreated everything, even if you traced it or take a photo of it and then edit it on Photoshop, whatever process you did to recreate it, that is copying. Another thing is, for example, you saw a beautiful lettering work and then you recreated it, but you just changed the colors. Like what you saw in the intro, that is also copying. And I hope you know that I was being very sarcastic in that intro, just to make sure that there's no confusion. Next, what if you saw a lettering composition with a really, really nice layout, and then you recreate it, but slightly changing the lettering style, the size, the layout, the colors, everything's the same. You just change some of the lettering styles, like turn all of the sans serifs into serifs. That, I'm afraid, is still copying. Or what if you took a photo of it, transferred it to Photoshop or Illustrator, and then you just assign fonts that are close to the original design? That is also copying. So those are the obvious copied work. Now let's go to the gray area. So for this one, it's really hard to tell by simply explaining. I think you could only judge whether a work is copied or not if you have the actual work in front of you. For example, you saw someone create a lettering work using the same quote as you. Chances are that work didn't copy yours, except if the quote or the phrase that you're working on is trademarked to you, then I don't think that work is copied. But for example, you saw someone else create the same work as you, and then the layout is very similar. When I say very similar, when you redraw the guide shapes for the layout and everything's in the same size, same proportion as your work, maybe that's copied. I think the only sure way to tell whether someone else copied your work is when a lot of elements of your work is similar to theirs. For example, the layout, the size of the guide shapes that you did, the quote that you used, the lettering styles, the colors, and the decorative elements that you did. If most of what I mentioned is seen in your work and your source of inspiration, maybe you subconsciously copied someone else's work. But again, we can't really tell whether a work is copied or not unless we are able to compare actual work. But let's always go back to what I think is the most important, which is respect. Just make sure you respect other creator or other artists or designers' work by not intentionally copying their work. But for example, created something very, very similar, but it's not your intention to copy someone else's work. As a respect to your source of inspiration, I would just suggest that you don't post it, recreate your work add more of your personality, add more of your own ideas before finalizing your work. But the best way is really to avoid copying someone else's work. So I'm going to give you some tips on how to avoid unintentionally copying someone else's work, because you want to respect other artists and you want others to respect you as well. So here are my 4 tips for you. Number 1, don't look back at your inspiration when you're creating your work. When you're in the process of creating something, don't look back on your different sources of inspiration, because the tendency is that you're going to be greatly influenced by what you see. So by looking back and forth from your work and to your inspiration, there's a strong chance that what you're creating will be very, very similar to what your inspirations are. So that is my first tip to you, to avoid looking back at your inspiration when you're creating. Number 2, to spend more time experimenting, exploring, and sketching. When I have a work that I want to use as my source of inspiration, I don't go straight from looking at the work to the actual creating of my work. What I do is I get a big sheet of paper and start sketching what you like about your inspiration, and then from there try to change parts of it, try new things, try to reinvent it, just try different things to see what will work. And then after doing a lot of sketches, that's when you move on to your actual work. And you should follow my first tip, which is not to look back, because if you look back, there's going to be a big chance of you copying what you just see. That is my second tip for you. Number 3, your inspiration should only be a small percentage of your actual work. If you see someone else's work and you want to create something inspired from it, you don't take the same quote, you don't take the same layout, you don't take the same lettering styles, you don't take the same color from that same source, because what you'll end up with is copying someone's work. Just remember that you don't take a lot of things from one work. 4, it is the most important tip that I could give you, is to trust your gut. When we create something, you have to remember that you're not just creating for other people to like, you should also create it for yourself. Your source of inspiration should not be the standard for determining whether your work is good or bad, because if you follow that standard, then your basis for a good work will be whether it is similar to that or not. You have to trust your gut on what feels right and what looks good, because at the end of the day, we want to be happy with our own work. Because if you can't trust your gut, you'll keep on doubting your work, and the more you doubt, the more you're going to look back at your source of inspiration, which is the opposite of my first tip. So I'll end this video here, because I feel like I've been talking for quite some time now. It's going to take me a very, very long time to edit this, but I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I hope you find this content really informative. If you have any comments, any reaction, positive or negative, I'd like to know your thoughts on this as well. Do you agree or disagree with what I've shared? Let me know in the comments. Let me know in the comments what you think of this type of video, wherein I'm sharing my opinions to you about an important subject matter. Go hit that like button and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so that you won't miss part 2 of this video. That's it. I'll see you. Oh wait, I forgot to announce the giveaway winner. So let me just grab my phone. The winner of the giveaway is NYXArts _. Congratulations, NYXArts. If you are the winner, send me a DM on my Instagram with your complete shipping address, and I'll send the prizes straight to you. So that's it. I'll see you next week for another video. Bye.